Hey Falcons, Mrs. Pfeiffer here, back for week 3, part 2 of our lesson, our summer lesson. In the last video, we talked about our vocabulary words for this week. We talked about character traits, and I showed you that creepy, funny looking clown, and we talked about all the clown's character traits. So physically, the clown is made out of glass. It's got a green hat, yellow hair, a big bow, big yellow bow, colorful outfit with blue buttons. So we talked all about the character traits, physical, and then we talked about the personality traits of a clown. So we don't know the personality traits of this clown because it's not a character in a story, but if it were, we said it might be silly and funny and a little creepy or strange or weird. So we talked all about this guy right here. So if you missed that, make sure you go back to the other video. In this video, we're going to be reading our story, A Bad Case of Stripes. And before we do that, we're going to go over our vocabulary words for this week. So in the last video, we talked about our vocabulary words. Our first word was drowsiness. Please say drowsiness. And drowsiness means so sleepy. Drowsiness means you're very sleepy. The next word was bizarre. Bizarre. Can you say bizarre? That's so bizarre. It means strange or weird. The next word was heaping. Can you please say heaping? Heaping means a large mound of something. Remember I said I want a large mound of French fries. Okay, so a heaping pile of French fries. The next word is fretting. Fretting. Remember we said fretting means worried or anxious. We said fretting. And the last word is examine. So remember, examine means to inspect or investigate. So examine. We inspect or investigate. So in today's story, you're going to find all those words and you're going to find a lot of character traits. When we find or you come across a character trait, I can't be there with you to talk about it. So what I want you to do is you can pause this video and talk to your families about the character traits or ask questions. Is that a character trait? And if you do spot a character trait and you know for sure it's a character trait, you're going to go, that's a character trait. Can you do that with me? That's a character trait. That's a character trait. So things like let's see, her physical appearance. So if you just look at the cover, you can tell physically her physical character traits. She's very colorful, like her stripes. She has stripes. She has brown hair, a bow. Okay, she looks like she's in her jammies. She looks like she's on a couch or something. Looks like she's sick. She has a thermometer in her mouth. So you can tell that's what she looks like. So that's a character trait. But you can also tell things about their personality. Does she look like she might be fretting about something? She's fretting. She's worried, right? Her face looks like she's a little worried. That's a personality trait. She's worried. She's anxious. Okay. Maybe she is sad or mad or angry. Okay. Those are also character traits. Maybe she's excited in a part of the book. Well, not in this front page, but maybe she's excited. Okay, so those are all personality traits, how the character is thinking and feeling. And we're going to first figure out who the main character is, because that's really important. And then we'll start talking about how the character changes throughout the story, how their thinking and feeling changes, how they physically look changes in this story even. So there's a lot to talk about with the story with character traits. So stick around because this is going to be good. Okay, and like I said, this is one of my favorite books, but let's dive in. Before I begin, if you have this book at home, get it out now. Pause this video and get it out. If you don't, that's okay. Just follow along with me. And yeah, it'll be great. Either way, no big deal. Okay? So, A Bad Case of Stripes by David Shannon. Camilla Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today, she was fretting even more than usual. Fretting. It was the first day of school, and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror. Then she screamed. That's a character trait. There are lots of character traits just on this first page. So she put on a red dress, physical, right? Look at her face. She's fretting, she's worried, she's anxious. Those are also character traits. Her mother ran into the room, and she screamed too. "Oh my heavens!" she cried. "You're completely covered with stripes!" This was certainly true. Camilla was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream felt Camilla's forehead. "Do you feel all right?" she asked. "I feel fine," Camilla answered. "But just look at me." "You get back in bed this instant," her mother ordered. "You're not going to school today." Camilla was relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what the other kids would say. And she had no idea what to wear with those crazy stripes. Do any of you feel a little anxious or nervous on the first day of school? I sure do. Even now, even as a teacher, I feel nervous on the first day of school. So I feel like I always try to pick the best perfect outfit for the first day of school. Do any of you do that too? That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to examine Camilla. "Most extraordinary," he explained. "I've never seen anything like it. And are you having any coughing, sneezing, runny nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, drowsiness, shortness of breath, or uncontrollable twitching?" "No," Camilla told him. "I feel fine." "Well then," Dr. Bumble said, turning to Mrs. Cream, "I don't see any reason why she shouldn't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that should help clear up those stripes in a few days. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me." And off he went. Do you think some cream is going to help with the stripes? Look at her tongue. Even her tongue has stripes on it. I don't know about that. The other kids thought this was great. One yelled out, "Let's see some purple polka dots." Sure enough, Camilla turned all purple polka dotty. Someone else shouted, "Checkerboard!" and a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camilla was changing faster than you can change channels on a TV. That's a character trait. So look at her. She's changing. As they're yelling out different things, she's changing colors and shape. And there are different shapes on her body, all different kinds of things. That night, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cream," he said. "I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camilla home from school. She's just too much of a distraction, and I've been getting calls from other parents. They're afraid those stripes might be contagious." Camilla was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago everyone liked her. Now nobody wanted to be in the same room as her. Her father tried to make her feel better. "Is there anything I can get you, sweetheart?" he asked. "No, thank you," sighed Camilla. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans. But she had been laughed at enough for one day. Well, yes, I see," Dr. Bumble mumbled when Mr. Cream phoned the next day. "I think I'd better bring in the specialists. We'll be right over." About an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to the Creams. "This is Dr. Grop, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young." Then the specialists went to work on Camilla. They squeezed and jabbed, tapped and tested. It was very uncomfortable. "Well, it's not the mumps," concluded Dr. Grop. "Or the measles," said Dr. Sponge. "Definitely not chickenpox," put in Miss Dr. Cricket, or sunburn, said Dr. Young. Try these, said the specialist. They handed her a bottle filled with different colored pills. Take one of each before bed, said Dr. Grott. Then they filed out the front door, followed by Dr. Bumble. Who seems to be the main character in this story so far? Can you tell someone that you're with, or comment below if you can? Who's the main character in this story? Who is it mostly talking about? If you said Camilla Cream, the little girl, you're correct. So that's who we're paying attention to for our character traits. That night, Camilla took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did feel different. But when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit right. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant, multicolored pill with her face on it. Oh my goodness. That's a trait. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called, but this time, instead of the specialists, he brought the experts. Dr. Gord and Dr. Mellon were the finest scientific minds in the land. Once again, Camilla was poked and prodded, looked at and listened to. The experts wrote down lots of numbers. Then they huddled together and whispered. Dr. Gord finally spoke. It might be a virus, he announced with authority. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camilla. Or possibly some form of bacteria, said Dr. Mellon. Out popped squiggly little bacteria tails. Or it could be a fungus, added Dr. Gord. Instantly, Camilla was covered with different colors of fungus blotches. The experts looked at Camilla, then at each other. We need to go over these numbers again back in the lab, Dr. Gord explained. We'll call you when we know something. But the experts didn't have a clue, much less a cure. Does this remind you of anything? Maybe right now with the virus that's going on, it reminds me of us not being able to find a cure right now because it's so tricky. This seems like a tricky problem to have, right? Thank goodness that's not what goes on when you're COVID, huh? By now, the TV news had found out about Camilla. Reporters from every channel were outside her house telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Soon, a huge crowd was camped out in the front lawn. Look at all those people there to see Camilla. The Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, physics, an old medicine man, a guru, and even a veterinarian. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camilla's strange appearance until it was hard to recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and a long furry tail, but nothing worked. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camilla. Close your eyes, she said. Breathe deeply and become one with your room. I wish you hadn't said that, Camilla groaned. Slowly, she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth. Her nose was a dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran from the house. What are we going to do? Cried Mrs. Cream. It just keeps getting worse and worse. She began to sob. Oh no. That's a crazy character trait, right? At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the front door. He opened it, and there stood an old woman who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. Excuse me, she said brightly, but I think I can help. She looks very nice. She went to Camilla's room and looked around. My goodness, she said with a shake of her head. What we have here is a bad case of stripes. One of the worst I've ever seen. She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. Here, she said. These might do the trick. Are those magic beans? Asked Mrs. Cream. Oh, my, no, replied the kind old woman. There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans. I'll bet you like some, wouldn't you? She asked Camilla. Camilla wanted a big, heaping plate full of lima beans more than just about anything, but she was still afraid to admit it. Yuck, she said. No one likes lima beans, especially me. Oh, dear, the old woman said sadly. I guess I was wrong about you. She put the beans back in her bag and started towards the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good. And being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she'd been going through. She finally couldn't stand it. Wait, she cried. The truth is, I really love lima beans. I thought so, the old woman said with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. Mmm, said Camilla. Suddenly, the branches, feathers, and squiggly tails began to disappear. Then the whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. I'm cured, she shouted. Yes, said the old woman. I knew the real you was in there somewhere. She patted Camilla on the head, then she went outside and vanished into a crowd. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care a bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never had even a touch of the stripes again. The end. That book was full of character traits, wasn't it? From the beginning to the end. So in the next video, we're going to talk about how Camilla changed her traits, changed from the beginning to the end of the story. We're going to talk about how she physically changed, how she looked differently. We're also going to talk all about how she felt differently on the inside, how she felt at the beginning to how she felt at the end. So what I want you to do after this video, I want you to talk to your family and get a couple of ideas of some really good character traits. So in the next video, you'll be able to already know and be ahead of the game to identify some of our character traits for Camilla, our main character in this story. I will see you there.